My name is Kevin Wood. I'm turning 30 this year, and I'm technically the president. More specifically, I'm the CEO of the company. We've got our headquarters in Germany and recently managed to set up a branch in the US, too. I guess I owe it to the many people I've met along the way for getting me here. Though I was born in the US, due to my parents' job transfers, I grew up in Germany from a very young age. Naturally, everything around me was in German. However, my parents are American, so we spoke English at home, and they made sure to teach me all about American food and customs. And most importantly, my grandparents lived in the US, and I visited them every long vacation. So, even though I lived in Germany, I was familiar with life in the US, especially the summer vacations of elementary schools in Germany are almost the same as those in the US. During vacations, I stayed at my grandfather's place, and it was a blast doing various things. My grandfather worked in a factory, so he couldn't spare much time, but I still remember having a lot of fun going to the beach and to festivals with him. But what I enjoyed even more were the other activities. To others, they might not seem much of an event, but volunteering, swimming, and summer camp were my absolute favorites. It was because I could play with kids my age from the area. At first, I was nervous about fitting in, but as I showed up year after year, I was accepted and naturally began to play with everyone. Before I knew it, I was even invited to join them when they gathered to do their homework, and I would work on workbooks with them. Luckily, I was about as proficient as everyone else, so even if there were questions I didn't understand, I could figure them out with a little help from my friends. And there was this one guy who was really good at explaining things.
Look carefully, the units are different, so you can solve it like this.
He was my future best friend, Eric Walker. Eric wasn't particularly noticeable, but he was kinder and smarter than anyone else. If he saw another kid struggling with a problem, he would quietly approach and help them figure it out together, instead of just giving them the answer. During the summer of my 5th grade, we were, as usual, gathered and studying together. That day, as I was smoothly solving problems, I suddenly noticed the mechanical pencil Eric was holding.
Eric, that's a cool mechanical pencil.
Oh, yay! My grandpa bought it for me.
He showed me the mechanical pencil with a happy look. It was well cared for and looked really cool, shining brightly.
The spring inside this was made by my grandpa.
Really?
As I and others expressed our surprise, Eric nodded shyly with a smile. As it turned out, Eric's grandfather managed the factory where my grandfather was an executive. When I hung out at Eric's house until evening, his grandfather, often covered in oil from his work, would take care of us.
Hey, Kevin, wanna stay for dinner?
As he laughed and wiped the sweat from his face, he ended up smearing oil on his cheek.
Grandpa, you've got your cheek dirty.
Oh, really? Well, that's usual for me.
Despite being the factory manager, akin to a CEO, he had no airs about him and worked hard, getting dirty himself. His down-to-earth attitude looked very cool to me back then. Additionally, the stories he told about my grandfather were really interesting.
Kevin, your grandpa is the best. He manages intricate tasks relying on the feel of his hands, more reliable and honorable than anyone.
I knew my grandfather was a kind man, but he wasn't one to talk much about himself, so it was refreshing to hear. A few days after Eric showed me the mechanical pencil, my grandfather approached me shyly.
Kevin, this is for you, because you always work so hard.
And he handed me a mechanical pencil, the same one as Eric. In other words, a mechanical pencil whose parts were lovingly made by my grandfather.
Grandpa, thank you.
I was genuinely happy and clutched the mechanical pencil tightly. Seeing this, my grandfather scratched his nose, smiling bashfully.
This spring that my company made is in it. I hope it can help you with your dreams, even just a little.
My parents are always by my side, but I only get to see my grandfather during the summer months. Despite that, I felt happy to be looked after so warmly even as a kid. And I secretly admired that.
By the way, Alan, our boss was praising you. He said he really wants you to come to our factory.
My grandfather, Alan, and Eric's grandfather are very good friends. They're what you'd call friends beyond the barriers of their job titles. They sometimes get together at each other's homes to drink beer, and they always look like they're having a great time. Maybe seeing them like that made me secretly hope that I could have such friends someday. As time passed, we went on to middle school and high school. Perhaps influenced by my grandfather, I had become a collector of stationery. If there was an eraser of an unusual shape, I'd buy it with my allowance to try it out, or if I found a notebook with a texture I liked, I'd use it over and over. It was kind of nerdy, maybe. But speaking of mechanical pencils, there are so many different mechanisms at work. Sometimes I'd take one apart entirely and couldn't put it back together. I was that serious about my interest in stationery. What writing tools are easy to use in class? I often found myself thinking about that during lessons. But don't forget, I live in Germany. Growing up benefiting from my grandfather's meticulous craftsmanship, I came to realize day by day just how convenient the stationery he made really was. Other stationery might be stylish, but they often lack functionality. That's why my obsession with stationery was hard to convey to my German friends. So, the person I always talked to about it was him. The guy sitting in front of me keeps changing his pen, and it's really bothering me.
Yo, it makes that clicky noise, doesn't it?
Maybe I'll give him a 3-color ballpoint pen next time. Eric and I emailed each other almost every day, and he would listen to my gripes, and vice versa. I'd hear about new stationery coming out in the US from him. Then during the summer of our sophomore year in high school, when I returned to the US, Eric suddenly said something unbelievable.
I think I'm going to take over my grandpa's factory.
Wow, congratulations. With your smarts, Eric, all you need now is some hands-on know-how.
Yeah, that's why I'm learning everything I can from Grandpa now. But I have another dream, too.
A dream? What is it? Tell me.
I want to start a business with you.
Really? I almost spit out the water I was drinking. How did it come to this? All I could do was blink in surprise at Eric. But Eric didn't hesitate at all and continued.
Kevin, you're about the only one who can keep up with my love for stationery.
Well, that's true.
And you've probably thought a lot about various things in Germany, hadn't you?
Well, right.
Then let's show the world the good things about stationery of the US. Let's spread the word about the good things in the US together.
Eric's straightforward gaze left me speechless. Maybe our grandfathers had similar conversations. Oh my God. That thought made me laugh before I could even reply. Eric looked puzzled by my sudden laughter. I took a moment to calm down with a glass of water, then looked straight at Eric. I hadn't really thought about doing something as big as promoting the goodness of the US. But I wasn't planning on just vaguely going to university either. If I'm going to do something, I want it to be related to stationery. I hadn't thought about starting a business before, but it'd definitely be fun with you, Eric. I reached out my hand straight to Eric. As if he had been waiting, Eric grasped my hand with both of his.
That's the spirit. We still have time. Let's hit the books hard from now on.
We made a solid promise in the midst of summer. Someday, we'd start a business together and take it international. From there, we continued to encourage each other towards our goals. After graduating high school, Eric went on to study engineering at a university in the US, learning all the techniques from his grandfather, while I went to a university in Germany and studied business management. Whenever I felt overwhelmed by the workload, I would always reach out to Eric for a pep talk. Of course, the same was true in reverse. Then one summer, usually I would go to the US, but it seemed better for Eric to see the Germany, so he came over. I thought Eric's German was beginner level, but he was smart by nature, so his German improved quickly. I was surprised at how fast he improved. Thinking this, I showed him to my room. Eric laughed amusingly at the sight of my room cluttered with documents and stationery.
That's just how a bachelor lives.
I'll never forget that. Neither of us even had girlfriends. After that, Eric toured Germany, doing a bit of sightseeing. He dismantled the stationery he bought the same day at my house, and we talked passionately until we forgot to sleep, just like when we were kids.
We could simplify this part even more.
Really, you can do that.
Yo, who do you think I am?
Finally, it was time for me to graduate from university. By then, Eric was nearly managing everything on his own. Still, there was some anxiety, so for a while, his grandfather stayed around to watch over things, which was reassuring. Right after I graduated, I used the money I had saved from part-time jobs during university to start a stationery company. I also signed contracts with Eric's factory and other friendly companies, finally setting sail. At the beginning of the business, I personally pitched our products everywhere, desperately increasing the number of stores that would carry them. My focus was on students. First, I approached the stationery stores I often visited during my student days. Fortunately, because I was a regular, they were all receptive. As expected, our lightweight mechanical pencils and 3-color ballpoint pens exploded in popularity. They became a topic among students and even made a bit of a buzz on social media. The promotional power of social media is incredible, and from there, the number of stores handling our products rapidly increased to the point where production could barely keep up.
Your eye for business was spot on, wasn't it?
It's because you make good products. We praised each other's efforts while screaming with joy. 5 years later, my company, well, our company, had become quite well known. As a result, we also established a branch in the US and started selling stationery with stylish European designs. The launch there was also very successful. The fountain pens, which combine the craftsmanship influenced by my grandfather with European design, were a hit. Especially the fountain pens, since you can enjoy the ink too. They were popular with people who have a strong preference for quality. However, we couldn't bring the production lines to Germany, so we were completely dependent on craftsmen in the US, which limited our production capacity. I think we need to move to a new phase soon.
Yo, let's sit down and think it through. I want you to see how things are going over here too.
Indeed, since the business took off, I hadn't been able to return to the US much. Of course, Eric hadn't had the time to come to Germany either. So, we decided to meet face to face and discuss things, going back to our roots. Also, I was concerned about our grandfathers. They said they were fine over the phone, but still, I wanted to see them while I could. With that, I packed a bag full of souvenirs and headed to the US. I had things I wanted to do in the US. First, inspect the factory as much as possible. I wanted to thank the team making our products and find out who was involved. And then, inspecting the branch in the US. Of course, a company isn't just about the factory. There are salespeople who make the products sell, accountants who handle the finances, and many other talents involved. The strong sales in the US are thanks to them, so I definitely wanted to thank them in person. I was hoping to hear some good ideas from both the factory and the branch.
Kevin, over here.
When I arrived at the airport, to my surprise, Eric himself came to pick me up. As I stood there astonished, he approached me with a big smile and said,
While you're here, I'll be with you. I rearranged my schedule just for this day. Don't worry, everyone is competent.
It seems Eric trusts his colleagues at the factory. Seeing that made me feel happy too. Then, let's catch up, just the two of us. With that, our inspection trip began. Eric drove us first to the main factory where he works. I might have been the most surprised there. The facilities had improved significantly since I saw them when I was a kid.
Of course, we had to increase production, right?
Eric smiled proudly. I knew Eric had been working hard, but seeing it firsthand almost brought tears to my eyes. Trying to cover it up with a cough, I changed into my work clothes. My work clothes were new and clean, but Eric's, which he changed into, were stained with oil and chemicals, a testament to his hard work.
Well, Eric, there's an urgent call.
Okay, got it. Sorry, Kevin. Go ahead without me.
Just as I finished changing, Eric got an urgent call, and I had to start the factory tour alone for the time being. Finally stepping into the actual workplace, though a worker with some spare time guided me, I was nervous about being in a real work environment for the first time. As I looked around curiously at everything, the workers, although they didn't stop their tasks, greeted me with smiles and nods. I smiled back at them. What are you working on here?
Yes, this is.
Even to my naive questions, Everyone answered politely. They honestly talked about what they focus on and what the challenges are. After hearing quite a bit, I realized that it would be difficult to increase production further without expanding the factory's current scale. That meant we needed to think of new initiatives. As I walked back to the office, Eric, who had just finished the phone call, rushed back.
Sorry, that took a long time.
No, it's fine. I've pretty much seen everything.
That's good then. Hey, Kevin, I just got a call.
Apparently, the call was from a paper maker Eric is close with, who said he really liked the writing feel of the fountain pens we released recently. That's great, I started to say, but stopped myself and looked at Eric. Hey, why are you so close with a paper maker?
Oh, I've been friendly with him since my grandpa's time.
Next, how about we focus on paper products, notebooks, or stationery? We'll have to think carefully about that.
That makes sense. The fountain pens are selling well, and if we can come up with a good ink formula that blends well, that would be awesome.
Can't you ask that guy for help?
Got it. I'll ask him again next time.
Thinking of paper formulations might not have occurred without hearing the word craftsman. Well, just coming up with formulations can be researched indefinitely. But our products sell because of a precision that only we can offer. That's why we need the craftsman's skills. While thinking about this, I reflected once again on the workers I had seen today. Even though their tasks involved machinery, they ultimately used visual checks and manual verification, accomplishing tasks only humans can perform. I was reminded once again of the importance of human qualities that we need to continue to value. After that, I revisited the factory with Eric and saw him being revered as the factory manager. Eric and I both aimed for such an environment, and we ended up talking with various people and stayed longer than intended. Hey, Eric, time's running out.
Whoa, you're right.
A quick glance at the watch showed it was nearly time to head to the branch in the US or we'd be late. We downed our cold coffee in one gulp, and without even time to change, we rushed out of the factory. Originally, we were supposed to head there with Eric driving, so it looked like we wouldn't be too delayed, but I made a quick call just to be sure. The woman who answered was very cheerful and pleasant. It was clear that people like her were part of the reason the branch in the US was running smoothly. During the drive, we talked about how grateful we were for their efforts and managed to arrive just a few minutes late. Sorry, excuse us. The entrance was neatly organized, and it felt good to be there. We stood out in our dirty work clothes, but we felt no embarrassment and carried ourselves confidently.
I'm very sorry. The branch manager is still with the previous client and running late.
Oh, then, could you show us around? Since we're here, we'd like to see who is working.
Yes, of course. Shall I show you around?
No, you must be busy with other tasks. We'll take our time looking around, thank you. We said this and declined the woman's offer. The woman led us to the front of the office area and hurried to another floor. This was my first time actually seeing the branch in the US, and despite feeling guilty about the business, I realized we really needed to appreciate their hard work. And finally, the long-awaited office. There are a lot of employees here who support our company. With that in mind, we entered the office with a nervous look on our faces.
Hey, do you realize you're holding everyone back?
At that moment, the office fell dead silent. The voice that echoed clearly carried irritation, and the atmosphere was tense. We looked towards the source of the voice, wondering what was happening. There, a man in an expensive suit was standing in front of a young employee, looking upset. The young employee being scolded was looking down, apologizing in a faint voice. Trying to ask someone what had happened was impossible, as the other employees also kept their mouths shut uncomfortably, focusing on their own work. It was clear no one would speak up in such an atmosphere. I thought about observing for a bit longer, but seeing the angry man's demeanor, I couldn't stand by, and I signaled to Eric with my eyes that we needed to intervene, and our eyes met. It seemed Eric felt the same way. We quietly approached the two men. "Excuse me, what's happening here?"
Who are you?
The man looked suspiciously at us, who had just approached him unexpectedly. He looked at us solemnly, then snorted and took a sip of coffee from his desk.
This guy lost an important report for the main production line, so I'm giving him some guidance. Even a kid can manage paperwork, but this guy...
He gestured with his chin towards the young employee. The young employee looked like he wanted to say something, but instead looked down, frustrated. Something about this situation seemed off to me. That stuff. What is he saying?
Just like you see, he's just apologizing and not coming up with any solutions. This is why newbies are troublesome. They can't think of the next step.
He said this and laughed scornfully. Then, the young employee suddenly looked up and spoke.
"But I submitted that document to Max yesterday."
But, I told you not to make excuses.
This man clearly has no intention of listening to his young employee. Whether it's intentional or not, I don't know. But every time the young employee tries to speak up, he silences him right away. Judging from the situation, it seems he's the manager, and he's unilaterally hurling words at him. This situation is in no way acceptable, especially since such a thing is happening in my own company. I was shocked. Forgetting Eric was beside me, I instinctively spoke up. "Excuse me, I understand what you're saying, but why not listen to what he has to say once?"
Why would I believe someone who lost the document? He's bound to lie.
Still, blaming him outright won't solve anything. As I said this, I saw the manager's eyebrows twitch as he laughed. Then, he turned towards me, glaring.
Who are you? I'm the manager here, and if I say so, everyone should just follow along. I'm in charge of this general affairs. Are you talking back to me?
With that, he looked at our attire again and laughed mockingly.
And don't come here in such filthy clothes. You'll dirty the office. I don't know what business you have here, but this isn't a place for filthy people like you to come freely. Got it?
Filthy. We were working in the factory, so it's natural we are dirty. Moreover, that's not relevant now. Shouldn't we be more concerned about the whereabouts of the document than the cleanliness of our clothes or assigning blame? I firmly responded, and I could see the wrinkles in the manager's brow deepen. His hand tightened around the mug he was holding, easily noticeable. Yet he still wanted to say something to me and said it in a harsh voice.
What's your deal? Outsiders shouldn't be meddling in this. Who the hell are you anyway? Even your work clothes are brand new. Are you a newbie? What do you know about work? I have a career that I've built up unlike you. I'm not affected by the words of someone with as little social experience as you.
Career. Social experience. Certainly, compared to this man, I may still lack in many areas, but that's exactly why I want to interact directly with various people and learn what's best. As I've said before, I want to value the human qualities that only come from being personable. I want him to understand that too. With that determination, I faced him squarely. True, I may not have the social experience or career that you do. However, I do want to understand what the person in front of me is trying to say, what they want to communicate. That's why I think it's important to listen to them. Of course, I also want to understand what you're frustrated about. As soon as I said that, I felt a lukewarm sensation on my head. What's this? Liquid. When I realized I was drenched in the lukewarm coffee from head to toe, I could hear a faint scream from a female employee. While hearing the murmurs of the employees, I looked up to see the manager, who had inverted his mug, grinning triumphantly.
Hey, let me tell you how to treat you here, young man.
Wait, what are you doing?
It's okay, Eric. I'm okay. As Eric, who is usually reserved, raised his voice unexpectedly, I calmed him down. I faced the manager directly, coffee dripping from my bangs. So this is how things are done here. I understand very well now.
If you understand, that's good. Your work clothes got dirty, and your experience got better, right?
The manager laughed gleefully, to which I responded firmly, "You're fired, you know."
Sorry. What are you talking about?
What are you doing?
As the manager stood holding the empty mug and laughing, a voice echoed through the office. Turning around, I saw the woman from earlier and a kindly-looking man rushing in anxiously.
Oh no, CEO, Kevin, are you okay?
Yes, I'm fine. Could I possibly borrow a towel?
Of course. Hey, get a towel and some clothes.
Right away.
My clothes are okay. I was planning on leaving anyway.
I see. Then I'll arrange for your car.
Thank you, I appreciate it. The office suddenly became frantic. As I wiped the dripping coffee with a towel provided by the hurried woman, I looked at the manager, who had a dumbfounded expression, not understanding what was happening.
What? Why is everyone in such a panic?
It seemed he completely failed to grasp what was happening, even taking the fact that I was called the CEO as a joke. However, the branch manager lost his temper at that.
Idiot, he is our CEO. He came here specifically for an inspection, and what a terrible thing you did to him.
At that moment, the manager's face turned ashen as he realized the gravity of what he had done. His hand holding the mug trembled visibly.
Seriously, you're joking, right?
There's no way I would make such a trivial joke. You should understand. Or is your social experience not sufficient to grasp that? I said this while holding the coffee-stained towel, still staring at the manager. I don't want to judge people by their appearance or age. I want to sincerely engage with what's in front of me and foster a company that uplifts through cooperation. Of course, being good at your job is preferable, but people who belittle others to feel superior can hardly respect others. I will contact you later regarding your employment. For now, I will take my leave. Sorry for causing a disturbance, everyone. I announced to the employees there that I was leaving. The abruptness of the event left many employees visibly shaken. Having caused enough disturbance, it did feel a bit too late to reconsider, but realizing there was nothing more to gain by staying, we swiftly made our way back to the entrance. Fortunately, only my upper body was wet, so I could still get in the car. I handed the towel I used to wipe the coffee to the woman next to the branch manager, likely his secretary, and apologized once again. I am truly sorry for causing such a disturbance.
No, it's us who should apologize for our employees' grave disrespect, and I also have a fault for not noticing this situation sooner. I'm sorry for the trouble caused to you. Regarding his employment,
Including that, I would like to discuss further, so could we possibly arrange another time? We couldn't properly talk today.
yes, of course. I apologize for the trouble, but thank you in advance.
With that, I promised to visit again, and I decided to head back to the hotel. Eric looked quite flustered having witnessed everything, and I couldn't help but laugh seeing his more exhausted expression than mine. I myself was acting instinctively at that moment, and I felt exhausted by now. We looked at each other, laughed together, and simultaneously let out a big sigh.
That was a surprise. It's good that I came to see it myself.
Yay, sometimes you just have to see things with your eyes. It's not that I don't trust people, but I need to verify things myself to take responsibility. As we parted ways, we reflected on what was necessary for the company to continue to grow. Originally, we had planned to have dinner that night, but we were both too exhausted and decided to postpone it until tomorrow. As soon as I got to the hotel, I threw off my wet work clothes and jumped into bed. I still smelled like coffee, but I was too tired from everything that had happened today to even think about getting up. I'll leave the rest for tomorrow, and I went to sleep. During my stay in the US, various things happened. First, about the manager, Max, who had thrown coffee at me. After discussing it with the manager of the US branch and the HR manager, it was decided to move him to another department for retraining. He was actually competent and had made considerable efforts in sales before. However, after one major success, he seemed to have deluded himself into thinking he had done it all alone, and his attitude became arrogant after being transferred to HR to calm him down. Therefore, he was transferred to Eric's factory, and Eric himself took care of him. There's another big move on the horizon. I was able to speak directly with a paper craftsman closely associated with Eric, with whom I had a direct conversation. When we actually visited the workshop and saw the process in action, we realized just how delicately they carried out their work. However, he explained that it's precisely because of that connection that they can produce the exact texture of paper we desired. If his techniques could be incorporated, imagine the quality of products we could offer. When I discussed this, the craftsman said he would help as much as possible. He couldn't stop his current work entirely, but he was happy to assist in development. When I revisited the branch in the US, I heard from some employees that fountain pens and sealing stamps were becoming popular in the US, and if we could produce products that catered to this trend, they might be well received. When I discussed this with Eric, he said he would consult with the craftsman about making paper that worked well with ink and envelopes that didn't wrinkle or feel uncomfortable when sealed. Development took time, but it was decided to add a new paper production line at the main factory where Eric worked. And incredibly, the one to lead it would be Max, who had been transferred.
I've learned a lot from the factory manager about what I lack. I'm truly grateful to both of you for giving me another chance. I'll definitely get this on track.
Max said strongly to Eric. The results were a huge success. The ink dried quickly so it wouldn't smudge easily, yet the paper felt nice to touch and sold well along with our hit product, the fountain pens. Well-made stationery made from the same material also became popular as many people bought them in sets. Also, the design was fashionable and inspired by European vintage. Thus, our company gained even more momentum. We're currently considering whether we can launch this paper, which has been a hit in the US, in our German headquarters as well. Eric and I, without realizing, had become indispensable to each other, just like our grandfathers. We excel in different areas, but what we value is the same. No matter how large the company grows, people cooperating with each other towards the same goals is what matters. With this in mind, we will continue delivering our beloved products to various people,